Tell us about your business. You're overseas.
Your currency exposure.
Do you hedge your currencies? Well, how is this affecting you?
Yeah, it's still early for us to be doing the complex hedging that'll be required, and you probably do that as you get to be a public company. But we're in 66 countries. We operate in 350 cities, so we're essentially have 66 different currencies we take in. And for us, what we see on the ground is extreme health in China and Asia. Things are going really well out there. We're in a few countries in Latin America, Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, and things are going well sort of pretty much everywhere.
But why wouldn't you want to hedge your currency? Why would it matter whether you're a public company or not?
I mean, I think, you know, when you start out in the U.S. and your first few years are only focused in the U.S., we're just starting to get some of these foreign markets in the last 18 months. And I think you see how big those get and if it's worth the effort to do all that. And I think as these things happen, that's be something we have to consider going forward.
China's big for you. Brazil's suffering. Argentina's suffering. Tell us in the world. You said 66 countries, but specifically there.
Yeah, so China, I'm really excited about China. 5 of Uber's top biggest cities are in China now. 5 of our top 10 in terms of the number of trips we do per week. Yeah, Beijing, I think, just today got to be our #1 city in the world, bigger than New York and London.
Well, what portion of your total revenue is denominated in non-U.S. dollar currencies?
It's still mostly dollar.
It is?
It is still mostly dollar, again, because of when we started. San Francisco was our first city. We spent a year just working in that one city, and then the next year sort of added New York. So you had this, you know, figuring out the business model phase of the company, and then this great acceleration and getting all these other countries. So we're still young in a lot of these places.
I want to talk about dollars, $60 billion. I want to bring in also our senior tech correspondent, Sam Grobart, making his Bloomberg Go debut. A couple weeks ago, we sat down with Ron Perlman, and we were talking about your valuation. He didn't seem to support it. Take a look.
A real boon to people needing transportation.
But is it worth $50 billion?
$55 billion. I mean, it's an app, you know. It's an app in a taxi cab.
It's an app in a taxi cab. That's Ron Perlman. Now, we've heard from Kenny Dichter of Wheels Up, who said you're worth every dollar. The opportunities, if you decide you want to start delivering pizzas, if you want to take kids to school, the opportunities are boundless. I don't know, it's a big number.
I mean, you know, I think you imagine when the internet first came out, I mean, people say it's just a website. It's just Amazon, it's just eBay, it's just Facebook. And I think when you think about what's happening in the economy generally, connecting riders and drivers in our case, buyers and sellers in eBay, merchandise with consumers, the connection of all these things are creating tons of value. You know, prices are lower for consumers today on Uber than they were with taxi. Drivers are making more money, and therefore we're creating more value, and that's where the valuation comes from.
There's also a broader thing that you're doing here, isn't it? I mean, you are able to connect sort of the virtual world with the physical, and that's an incredibly important and very dynamic link for your company, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's online to offline. It's taking an online experience and then making something happen in the real world. And for us, it's hard because you have physical cars on the ground in 350 cities around the world, and then you have consumers which just have an app on their phone, and that's it. And that's how they connect to that world. And that two-sided marketplace with yours is complex.
Because of what you're doing, it has created this Uber effect. Many people say there are unicorns all over San Francisco that are going to die next year. Because of your success, this transformative business, there's apps all over the place, but they aren't providing that kind of value. What do you make of this?
So, yeah, you know, the unicorn phrase came from a friend of mine, Aileen Lee, out there, and I love it because it's so funny.
Mark Benioff thinks there's going to be quite a few dead ones next year.
I think what you'll see is that investors look for a few things in a company: a strong business model, great execution, and a great management team. And I think in times when they're frothy, you can overlook some of those things, but when times get a little tight, they say, well, does this company have 3 things? So are there going to be companies that don't have those 3 things? Sure.
And where are we? Are we in the frothy time?
I think people are looking harder at making sure that those 3 elements are in every company.
And Sam, how do we know? Because one of the phenomena here is these are all private. They're not publicly traded. And so if you get a few people in a VC saying you're worth $10 billion, then it's sort of reported you are. But the markets are not testing it. Is there a risk here of froth because we can't test it?
I think you're absolutely right. I think that, you know, the private money can be based on a lot of different factors, but it doesn't have quite the rigor that the public markets can bring to all of these companies. Some are probably great. Some probably aren't. But we just don't know right now.
Well, Mark Benioff is hypercritical of companies valued at over $1 billion that don't go public. Take a look.
A few months ago that I tweeted, you know, get ready for some dead unicorns. And I am a fan of the public markets. I am, and I'm a fan of public investors like the ones you mentioned, like Fidelity and BlackRock. These are great investors.
So, Emil, going public, you could have that discipline applied to Uber.
Well, I mean,
why not?
I mean, at some point we will. I think, right? You know, Fidelity and BlackRock are part of the Uber family. So, these sophisticated investors are part and parcel of the private markets these days. So they don't forget at the door what they do investing in public companies or private. So that discipline sort of comes from your investor class. But more important comes from the management team. Do you have the ethic of making sure that you're spending every dollar efficiently?